there we go. Okay, so we're going to play e4. And we are going to play... Well, what should we play? We can play Arai Lopez. Let's play Arai Lopez. Let's play Arai Lopez, which is my main opening, bishop a4. This is mainline theory. Okay, so b5 is already a mistake. Well, not really a mistake. There is a line called the Norwegian Variation where black actually does this. Now, the reason this is inaccurate is because this bishop kind of belongs on b3, right? You're sending the bishop to a square where it wants to go anyway. And here, the problem is black is not developed enough, right? Black doesn't have his bishop developed. So logically speaking, what do we want to do when our opponent isn't developed enough? What action do we want to take? And how do we take this action in the fastest possible way? Open up the center, shred it apart. Now, knight g5 isn't that good because of d5. But we want to go d4, shred the center. Logical, d4. Now, knight g5 is kind of like the fried liver, but it's not an improved version for white. I'll talk about this after the game. But after d5, black is completely fine. It's kind of like the fried liver with some minor changes, which are not necessarily in white's favor. So I wouldn't rush to play knight g5 there, as tempting as it is. And I'll write this down to explain it. Okay. But now the situation changes. These moves create sort of tension in the center. And what that means is now what move becomes quite a bit stronger. So knight g5 now is very interesting, but then maybe still d5. Okay, so we need to sort through the observations here, right? The most obvious and most tempting move is d takes e5. That's not actually a very good move. That d takes e5 simplifies the position. And if you guys calculate that variation, it leads to a queen trade. The problem is we don't want a queen trade. We want more than just taking queen. So let me think about this for a second, actually, if you don't mind. I'm actually doing some calculation myself. Okay, so the sort of developmental approach is to play bishop g5. But that's a little bit too slow. It allows black to develop. But here's the thing, guys. What move do we need to revisit? What move do we need to revisit now that d4, d6 has been played? The situation has changed. Well, bishop f7 is the right idea, but this is premature. Now we go knight g5 because here's the thing. Use the method of comparison. We're still attacking f7. So, like, knight takes d4 here allows a fork. So, black's only real way of defending this pawn, like literally, bishop e6 would blunder a pawn, is to play d5. But now that we've created this tension in the center, the move d5 basically plunges black headfirst into this crazy position where we are a lot closer to castling than black is. Remember that our ultimate goal here is to open up the center. And so we are essentially forcing black into doing it. And we are positioning the knight on a really, really good square where it could potentially sacrifice itself on f7. So in a certain sense, the addition of the move d4 is what we have here. If we go knight g5 immediately, black plays d5. Here, we have played d4, and we get the same position with the inclusion of that move. Obviously, it's good for white. We open up the center, and the bishop is now tying itself to the knight, which means there is no, like, discovered attack ideas, if that makes sense. So this is something people don't do enough of, right? A certain move doesn't work or is not that effective, and then people forget about that move. They just bury it, right? It's never going to work. But if you keep revisiting it, you might find that the circumstances have changed. That's a really interesting move by Alex, bishop g4. Now, his idea is that if we cover the attack on the queen with f3, the bishop is going to drop back to h5. That's actually a very ingenious idea, and the bishop is going to defend the pawn. Now, if we play knight takes f7, that leads to a queen trade, also not very desirable. But what can we do? Like, what is the intermediate kind of move here? We don't have to play knight takes f7, right? We don't have to get obsessed with forking him. We can play bishop takes f7, which is the next best thing. We take his pawn, free pawn, and we drive his king out into the center. That's not too bad, right? And then we'll play f3, right? Then we'll play f3, defending the queen with tempo, forcing the bishop out of there. Now, black is not completely lost here because what we need to notice here... Okay, so bishop h5 isn't actually a great move. This helps us do our job, and I'll explain that in greater detail after the game. So the thing is, this bishop on f7 was kind of stranded. So by leaving it there, black would have gained a tempo. Now we get a chance to take the bishop, and now we have all of the good stuff remaining. Okay, so normally in such positions, we don't want to close down the center. But there is an extenuating factor here. And that factor is the e6 square. What do we want to put there, and how do we make that happen? How do we make that happen? We want a knight there. So we do play d5. Now, there's a couple of things to understand here. We do close down the center. From a purely logical standpoint, closing down the center is not good here because his king is weak. So we want to keep the center open. But we're going to reopen the center. How are we going to reopen the center once we establish a knight on e6? And that's why we're doing this. That e6 square is like freaking black caviar. That's an amazing square. Bingo, we're going to play f4. Right? So in chess, this is what flexibility really means. We're closing down the center, yes. Bad, yes, from a logical standpoint. But we're doing it for a very specific reason. We want to get the knight to e6. And we're doing it with the knowledge that later we're going to reopen the center with f4. And we're going to do it with even greater effect because we're going to open up that f file. That f file is going to be the most direct avenue to his king. So we can actually play f4 immediately here. And there's no need to wait. But if we wanted to prepare f4, what would be the best way of preparing f4? Yeah, we can castle. So castling is the more methodical approach. We make our king safe. And now f4 is stronger because we anticipate the f file opening, which means we preemptively put the rook on f1. And while we're at it, we make the king safer. Do we need to do anything with this? Like, is there any need to not play f4 here because he's played c6? No. That's the power of a pawn chain, right? This pawn on e4 is protecting its neighbor on d5. So c takes d5 is not a threat here. In fact, it helps us because it opens up the e file. So we go f4. Yeah, knight takes h7 and bishop g5. He had knight covers the diagonal with knight f6. I thought about that. Yeah, so bishop g5 is fine, but bishop g5 would be met with knight f6. And the funny thing is we use this knight to our advantage because we're attacking with our queen. And if knight takes f4, no problem. Then bishop takes f4 and rook takes f4. And we've basically removed a defender. The knight can act as a defender here. So if I were Alex, I would go knight f6. Like, I would at least try to beef up the security along the f-file. It's not going to help him. Okay, so what should we do now? Should we take the knight? Should we do something else? We have several ways to win the game. We have like a very business-like approach, or we can basically go for checkmate. So it's not a free knight. If we take the knight, then he takes our knight. So like logically speaking, we can play e takes d5. That's the simplest move. That's the move we're going to make. But actually, that's not the move we're going to make. There is an even better move, which just wins a piece, right? We're attacking his knight. He's attacking our knight. So logically, we should be thinking, okay, can we move our knight with a threat? Yeah, we can. We can take the bishop. And we threaten the queen, but that's not the important part. And we take on h5. So we've traded in one advantage for another advantage. But the thing is, like, none of our other advantages have gone anywhere. The king is still exposed. The f-file is still about to get opened. So now we're up a piece and we're attacking. This is absolutely crushing. Now, why did I choose that? Because in a certain sense, it's like life insurance, right? Now we're attacking and we're not taking any risks. Because God forbid the attack fails, hey, we're still up a piece. But we need to complete our development. Let's not forget about that. We need to complete our development ASAP. This knight can now head to d5, which is a beautiful central outpost. And then we can get the bishop out to e3. We can bring the cavalry in if necessary, rook a to d1. Let's give him a check on d5. Now, knight to b6 may seem like a fork, but it's a little bit premature. For what reason? If we go knight b6 here, what defensive move does he have? That's why we're going to get our bishop out first. Because he has queen to a7, pinning the knight against the king. So let's go bishop e3 to cover that diagonal. The additional thing is we've already won a piece. We don't really need to hunt down for exchanges here. Now we can focus on giving checkmate, if that makes sense. Like, you need to make those judgment calls in the game. Okay, I've won a piece. Now I don't need to even give up my beautiful knight for that exchange, even if that does win an exchange. Because we're going for the greater glory here of just crushing him. And now we want to play f takes e5. And once we get the f-file, rook f8 is going to be an absolutely devastating threat. Our rooks are connected while his aren't. That's the key thing. In fact, we don't even have to do anything. We can play f takes e5 here, but no need for fanciness. Instead, where can we go with the queen? Like, how do we play with tempo? How do we play with tempo? So we have two possible moves. We can go up to h6, but we can also give a check on g5 or h4. Doesn't matter. We'll go queen g5 check. And if he goes king c8, then obviously we have a fork on b6. We shouldn't forget about that. If he goes to e8, then we do open up that f-file, and we stream in with a rook, and we give checkmate. Okay, so knight e7 doesn't change anything because this knight is pinned. We can also give a devastating check on b6. But again, the less, craziness, the better. We just play f takes e5 and check. And now he has to cover with his queen. Queen takes e7 is basically mate. And the game is over. Queen takes e7 is the fastest. Queen is pinned, right? King can't take the queen because knight defends it. King has to move aside, and we take the queen with checkmate. That was a really, really good game. Lots of instructive stuff there. And if Alex wants to hop on a Discord call, I'm totally down. But I realize it's pretty late, so he might be pretty tired and just wants to listen. So, oh yeah, perfect, Alex. That would be awesome. So, let me add you on Discord. 1 second. Could you maybe DM me on Twitch your Discord handle, and I'll add you, Alex? Let me go full cam. This is cool because I want to know your thoughts. I'm gonna torture the hell out of you. You're gonna see how annoying I am. And I'm gonna invite him to an analysis board. All right, 1 second. Oh, you messaged me on Discord. Okay, perfect. Let me see. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Hello. Hey, Alex. It's first of all, pleasure to meet you. It's going well. How are you? Mm-hmm. No, there was actually a lot of stuff. Let me just let me set your output so my chat can hear you. Okay, guys. Now, can you say something, Alex?
I thought I should have played d5. Gosh dang it. Oh hey, yeah.
Okay, now I think
that was
you
the
guys
move
can hear me.
I wanted to play d5, and then I thought I'd get cute with this weird little bishop move around tactic, but then
you did get cute. That was actually a really ingenious idea. Yeah, you guys can hear him now. Let me invite you to an analysis board. And you're Alex. You should get an invite pop up right now. Also, thanks for hopping on the call so fast. I know it's really late and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let me know if you got that invite.
Oh, I have to go to my live chess to see.
Yeah, live chess. Let me send another one in.
Okay, I sent another one. Sorry.
Yep. Just did.
I don't
like
see
if
anything.
you're on the you're in live chess.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't gotten any invites or anything.
Huh. Let me try invite selected. Okay, let me cancel it and then re-invite you. Sorry, there's glitches sometimes. Okay, I tried again.
No.
Nothing coming up.
No.
It's really weird.
Should I just like restart?
Can you like maybe refresh your live chess, and then if not, like I'll just like we'll open our own instances of the game, and then I'll just like walk you through. Whoa, knockout with 10 gifted. Thanks, man. Yeah, try to refresh. If not a problem.
Yeah, I've refreshed it.
All right, I invited you again. All right, chess.com is getting a message from me after this. No problem. So let's just, I'll just basically, if you can open the game on your own screen,
yeah.
I'll basically go by move number, and you guys on my chat. Thank you, Knockout, for the 10 gifted. Appreciate it. So basically, Rai Lopez, right? Which you just said you love.
Yeah, so much.
Now, move 4 b5 is actually a bit of a mistake.
Interesting. I thought it was just a theory, like, move.
So it's called the Norwegian Variation. Like, it does have a name.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a move that you will often want to play at some point. The problem with playing it immediately is once my bishop gets to b3, I'm targeting the f7 pawn. And the reason that is dangerous is because your king side isn't developed yet. So what you should do instead of b5 on move 4 is just go knight to f6.
Right, the Berlin. So
that's actually not after a6 though. Move 4. Sorry to interrupt you. Move 4.
After a6. Okay.
The Berlin is to play it immediately.
Gotcha. So I actually would usually play it. I would see if they wanted to trade their bishop on c6 or not. If they pushed it back, then I would bring my knight out. But the problem was, after that, I would be playing d6, and then they would just, or I would play like d5 or whatever it was. They would just take my pawn on e5, and then I like never knew how to defend that. Or if they did trade, if they trade or if they don't trade, once this pawn moves, they just take it because they've got this pin on my knight. And then I'm always like, crap.
That makes perfect sense. So, the thing is, like, after move 4, knight f6, right, they usually castle. Like, move 5 castles, right? So, the thing is, like, you don't want to push your d-pawn out just yet. What you want to focus on here is finishing your kingside development. So, you actually want to go bishop e7, move 5.
E7, okay.
Yeah, so you're developing modestly, but it's like top priority to finish your kingside development, precisely so that you can push the d-pawn out and not have to deal with that bullshit with knight 6 e5. So bishop e7, usually white goes rook e1, move 6. And only now, when you're ready to castle, you play your favorite move b5, move 6.
Got it. And then I can castle. I don't have to worry about this stupid trap.
Bingo. Or you can play d6 first, move 7. So bishop b3, d6, then you castle. And that actually leads to, like, then you have a bunch of ways to set your pieces up, but basically you're out of the woods, like, opening-wise. If that makes sense.
That's so much nicer.
And do you know what to do
that makes sense.
if they take your knight on move 4, the exchange variation, and then they take your pawn on e5? First of all, do you know what to take the bishop with?
I always take with the d pawn.
Correct, because you want to open up your bishop. And then if they take knight takes e5, what do?
I leave the game or something.
You're like, yeah. Whoa, another 10 knockout. Thank you.
I think I go queen g5, and then I'm threatening taking the pawn and the knight.
That is a very good move. Actually, that's the second best move, and Knockout really appreciated another bomb. But queen to d4 is even stronger. That gives black a small advantage.
So I used to play queen to d4, but then they just... I didn't know how to... I guess I'm threatening the pawn and the knight right
Muted
there.
myself.
And so
Thank you so much, Knockout.
And then I'm supposed to take the pawn, and then they trade their queens or something. I don't know.
That's exactly what happens. That's literally what happened. But the reason the black is better at the end, right? Knight f3, you take queen takes e4, queen e2. Then you trade queens, right? So move 8, king takes e2. And you develop your knight to knight f6. Now white's king is out in the center. It's kind of a sitting duck. What people often don't understand is even though the queens have been traded, that doesn't mean you can't attack him. In fact, you'll eventually put a rook on the e file, and that white king is going to be in big trouble. It's just a very nasty position for white.
Okay.
So you're going to develop your bishop, you're going to castle long, and you're going to quickly slam a rook onto the e file. That's just going to be a bad position for white. So does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes plenty of sense.
Yeah, Dr. Lo, white can play rook e1, king f1, but white can try to equalize, but it's just nasty. So anyways, going back to the game.
So I have one more question on this line.
As many as you want.
Prior to them, okay, so let's go back one and have them take on my C knight, and then I take with the D pawn. There's always like, they make like one move prior to this that like screws everything up. They'll do some move, like they'll like castle right now.
They'll castle, that's the main move.
Yeah,
so
they castle.
There's many
What's
variations.
the move I make now to keep this pawn alive and not... Because then I can't do my like tricky stuff, and I always lose that pawn because I always make the wrong move here.
Right, so there's one line that's the trap line, and then the line that I play. Now, I play the move f6, literally defending the pawn. Like, you ain't taking shit. But the trap line, it's called a fishing hook trap, is to play bishop g4, move 5. I don't know if you've seen this trap that I'm about to show you. So you pin the knight, right?
Those moves, so.
Fair enough. You're definitely going to play one of them. And I'm going to be watching. But so bishop g4, right? White can't take the pawn because he's spent. So what white does usually is he goes h3. And he tries to unpin the knight. So after h3, well, why... Tell me why that's bad. If you go bishop h5, white can forcibly unpin the knight and then win your pawn. How can you do that?
Oh yeah, I guess he would just push again to g4, and then he would take the pawn. And I think that's usually what happened. because I think I have played this a couple times, and they just push it back twice and then they take it. So I guess I'm forced to probably, and then I get this whole stupid thing where I'm pinned full. Yeah, it just turns into a disgusting scenario.
Right, but here's the mind-blowing thing. On move 6, you can play pawn to h5.
Okay.
And I remember learning about this the first time in 2005. There was a grandmaster who showed me this, and I was like, well, what? I just take the bishop? But do you see the idea? If you take the bishop, you take on g4, black is winning.
And now his knight has to move, but he can't because then you've got this mating line coming, and so it's just this disgusting,
completely disgusting. Queen h4, and the one key important thing, if white tries to move his f-pawn out after queen h4, you're probably seeing this on my stream, what is the key move here to stop the king from escaping before delivering the checkmate on h1 or h2? Bingo. That's it. That's how quickly the game can end. This is like a really famous trap, but it makes this line work.
Right.
So a lot of people don't know what to do against h5. Normally, like, white's main line is to play d3, just pawn to d3, and just ignore the bishop. Yeah. And then, and I'll just give you like one more move. Black doesn't need to move the bishop yet because taking it is still not being threatened. How can black apply pressure on the f3 knight after move 7 d3?
I guess I can move my queen out to f6.
That's what you do. I realize it looks artificial, but that's actually the theoretical move.
It looks artificial, yeah. Because I mean, at worst case, you're going to open up their. I mean, no matter what, you're going to open them up. So
right, exactly, and that's the theory. Like, white moves his bishop out to e3, and then you play bishop takes f3. Because you're opening up the king side, white needs to take with the queen. You get this endgame, and black is completely fine here. That's one of the reasons the exchange variation is innocuous. Holy shit, Radcliffe, another 10! Thank you so much, man. Yeah, sorry, my chat's popping off. Another 10 from Radcliffe. Appreciate it.
Radcliffe popping off. Go off, man. Get it.
Crazy. And just exchanging 10 gifted. So does this make sense? That is one of the main lines. The other is to play move 5 f6. We don't have to go over that right now. I would recommend bishop g4 for you.
Okay.
So that's the exchange variation. Any other questions like regarding the theory before we like talk about the great stuff that happened in the game?
No, I mean, I hate this line, but I feel a little more comfortable now because those are two of the ways that I get like brutalized in it. I've lost to the thing that you've done multiple times, and in different ways, I feel like, but it still always ends up in the same way where like I spend time developing the wrong stuff, and then I don't develop my king side, and then they always pop in with that
G5.
or that g5 knight, and then I'm like, crap, I can't move my bishop out in front. I can't like.
Well, the really the litmus test, right? Sorry, continue.
No, I was just gonna say I just always feel like I get in this weird spot. So I don't know. It's a tough opening because it's always so tricky.
That's why it's withstood the test of time. It's been around for 500 years. Another 10 by knockout. Oh my god, thanks, man. Damn girl. So there's one key thing to understand, right? Like, what makes the move knight g5 dangerous is precisely the fact that your dark squared bishop is not developed. If your dark squared bishop, and you can look at my stream to look at the position, if my dark squared bishop, if your dark squared had been on, you just castle, right? So that's literally the reason why you don't want to send white's bishop to b3 prematurely. And for what it's worth, the actual Norwegian variation goes knight a5, move 5. You want to go after that bishop as quickly as possible.
Interesting.
And
I was considering going knight d4, but I wasn't sure if that was. I mean, I felt like I should.
Holy
still
shit,
go after
guys!
that
Amazing,
bishop,
thank you.
That seemed like a more central knight. You can trade off your knight if you want.
Right.
You got this like whatever. I dump my pawns, I guess, but.
Yeah, and knight a5, this isn't a great line because white explodes the center with d4, and the theory goes on, but at the very least, you don't have that bishop on b3. So there's a lot of like details here, but it's a very dubious line. So after knight f6, if I had gone knight g5 on move 5, which I didn't, why did I not do that? Like, doesn't this just like win the game? What do you have here? This is an important thing to remember in case you get screwed like this. You can at least fight back a little bit.
So, I mean, d4.
Yeah,
Right.
d5. And if e takes d5,
Or
you have a
d5.
very important move. Hint, it's not knight
Does
takes
it not
d5.
take it with the knight?
So
Okay.
are you familiar with the fried liver?
Yeah.
So in the fried liver, and again, I'll just make these moves on my stream, which is bishop c4, Italian, move 3, knight f6, knight g5, d5, e takes d5. That's the theory. Do you know why black shouldn't take on d5 here? What's the refutation? And this will help you understand that position, because it's literally just like the same thing with some minor modifications.
If they do that, then you take with the knight there, then the king takes.
Queen f3 is the check. This is a famous line. Black is basically losing. King e6, knight c3, and again, there's a lot of theory here, but white has a devastating attack. This is like a super, like like one of those traps that's taught to every Russian schoolboy kind of thing. So the method of comparison.
That's why I always play bishop out first.
Right, bishop c5, and that's what I highly recommend, by the way, to everybody. Like, not to play knight f6, but to play bishop c5. But for what it's worth, against knight g5 takes, black has to know this move, knight a5. Like, this is the main move that makes black's position tenable. And literally
because then it forces the bishop off that line.
Yeah, but basically this is a pawn sacrifice line. White can give a bishop b5 check, and black actually goes c6. This is a hard line to understand if you're not familiar with it, because black basically gives up a pawn, and it's not clear what he has in return for it. But
why wouldn't I just take back with the knight there?
Yeah, so the reason you don't take back with a knight, it's not that this move is inherently bad. It's just that taking back with the pawn gives black an initiative because you attack the bishop. You have to play with tempo here. If you take with the knight, white will complete his development by castling or going d3.
Gotcha. And then you're just behind.
So yeah, actually d3 I think is the key. Because watch what happens after b takes c6. Here, white has to drop the bishop back, bishop d3. And black goes h6 and chases the knight away. And if the knight goes back to f3, then what does black have here?
Pin. Or a fork with pawn.
Exactly. But now compare this to the position after knight c6, white goes d3, and white is completely fine here. Black has no initiative. So the reason is you want to play with tempo. You have to play by attacking white's pieces, otherwise white essentially consolidates. So if we were to transfer this now to the text, the actual line in the game, knight f6, knight g5, d5, e takes d5. Now it should make sense why knight takes d5 is bad here.
Right, because it's the same idea.
It's the same idea, and the modification actually is in white's favor, if anything, because the knight on c6 that I'm highlighting with an arrow is actually undefended. So that adds insult to injury.
Right.
But knight a5 here, on the contrary, is stronger than it is previously, because the bishop actually can't give that check on b5. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you can't play bishop a4. He's just going to take.
Yeah, and he has to trade his bishop off no matter what. So.
Which is very good for black, because that's the main attacking piece. And the pawn on d5 is going to lose its support. Black's not even going to be a pawn down. Black's going to be better, probably. So that's why I played a preliminary d4 to open up the center and tie down your d-pawn. And now I went knight g5, because if you go d5 here on move 7, this is a much inferior version. I can play d takes e5 and rip open the center. Oh my god, so Alicia, thank you so much for the raid. I'm so sorry. I missed Alicia's raid. Thank you so much. I'll thank you properly later. Thank you, Alicia. I really appreciate it. But I'm sorry about that.
I felt like d5 would have still been fine.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to take, and then I take, with my knight. And then, I don't know, it just feels like now I'm defending.
Yeah, I mean, maybe here I would have either played ED.
That square now.
Yeah, so I would have played e takes d5 and basically said, okay, I'm up a pawn and I've got the center pretty open. But this would be the lesser evil. I think the way you played is very ingenious. This idea exists in many different lines. The problem is this bishop takes f7 move. Without it, I think black is fine. So, and after bishop f7, you're in huge trouble. Like, once I get that pawn out, get your king out into the center, you're in trouble. So I actually do think d5 is the last chance to get a tenable position.
Yeah, because I think I go d5, you take d5, I take d5.
Well, then I have
you
knight
take
f7.
e5.
Though.
Yeah, sorry, you take e5.
Right.
I mean,
By the
yeah,
way, if I
you
do take d5, what do you do here? Like, what does black have in this position?
I'd probably do the same thing where I go after you, I'd imagine, with the a5 knight.
Well, now you have knight takes d4. Same exact idea, just like you can take the pawn. Right.
Oh yeah, I guess I could just go right in front of it, yeah.
So, but this is all,
That's
you're right in spirit. So I play d takes e5, as you said, knight takes e5. And here, like, white needs to decide, white needs to prioritize. Like, I can either take your pawn on d5, or I can just castle and basically say, all right, you take my pawn on e4, which opens up my bishop. Not sure what's going on there. It's a pretty messy position. White's having all the fun, that's for sure. But, okay, black is probably fine if you're careful.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I feel okay in this position here because, like, I probably just play h6, kick your knight away, you know, even if you take or whatever. And then, like, you know, I can then develop and get to more safety. So I was thinking of that d5 move. And then I just thought, oh, it'd be so cute to play the bishop to g4. And it was cute. And then you took with your bishop. And it wasn't
quite as key. Yeah, and after f3, I think really your last chance. After bishop h5, I just think it's completely lost because I get that knight to e6. You know, the funny thing is, and this is something that is hard to see unless you look at the position the right way. That bishop on f7, you see, it looks like it's a piece you want to get rid of, but it's actually an asset for you. And I call this a type 2 undefended piece, right? It's a piece that's defended by only one other piece, which is the knight on g5. And potentially, how can you get rid of the knight on g5? What's the simple way of doing
h6.
that? Right. So where can you put your bishop so that it doesn't actually interfere and give my bishop a bailout option? It's like an anticlimactic move. Go back to d7. Yeah, or to c8. Right, d7 or c8.
One of the two.
So you're making white work for it here. Like, white is still much, much better, probably winning. I would still go d5. But you can, like, try h6 here. You can try to, like, mix things up. And just as a general piece of advice, if you're screwed like this, that's what you want to try to do. You want to try to confuse your opponent and add some spice to the position. Because when you play bishop h5, right, you make my job very easy. You give me a chance to take on h5, and now I'm no longer in any kind of danger. So as unpleasant as it is to play a move like bishop d7, you need to try to lull your opponent into this false sense of confidence, and he might miss h6, and then all of a sudden black is winning. So after bishop h5,
that actually makes sense.
And
that's something that I found. Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's something that I've really found at this level, especially. You know, I'm sure it doesn't work at your level as much, but I found that, like, before I used to just trade everything away. You know, I'd be down like a piece or down a couple pawns or a pawn or whatever, and I would just kind of like trade stuff off and simplify and like pray that I could win the end game, sort of thing, that they'd blunder there. But recently I started just making crap super complicated, just creating like the weirdest complications ever. And then sure enough, they just like blunder a rook or whatever. And it works super well because we're just not good enough at our level to see everything.
And neither are GMs. Like, that's also a strategy at my level, at my level of complexity. But the other thing that's associated with this, not to like beat a dead horse here, that bishop on f7, but that bishop is like the source of a couple pieces of advice. People think that when there's a piece that's in your territory, you automatically need to get rid of that, get it out, right? And sometimes that's true. Like when I had my knight on e6, I like what you tried to do. Like you tried to undermine it with c6. The problem is it was too late. The knight was already too ensconced on e6. But there are sometimes
at my level would totally take that pawn.
Right, and give up the knight. And that's why I liked what you did there. I think the spirit of what you did was great. But the thing is, like the dividing line, if a piece is defended by a pawn, that's an outpost, and that's a nasty piece. If a piece is not defended by a pawn, such as the bishop on f7, you can actually use a piece that's in your territory to your advantage. It doesn't automatically make it good just because it's sitting on, f7. So that's something you should be careful about. And you can, again, lure your opponent into thinking that and not moving the bishop out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, actually, where it's just trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, I've just, from the, like, little a couple lessons I've gotten, or I've watched people, it's always like, if there's an aggressive piece in your territory, kick it out of your territory. That's like always like the focus is like, get rid of it, make sure they get away. And so I've never really thought of it as like an asset to myself, where it's like, yeah, I can just like slip around and then suddenly push h6 and now they're in trouble,
right, exactly. So you want to catch your opponent on like assumptions that he's making from a general perspective. And did everything I did in the sort of last part of the game, did that all make sense? Was there anything you wanted to sort of talk through, from move 14 onwards?
Let me
refresh your memory on the stuff that happened.
Refresh it all. That all seemed fine and made sense. Man, it was just a dismantling.
Well, I mean, the position at some point kind of played. I mean, knight takes f8 was the key move, right? Just transforming the advantage, because your knight on h5 is hanging, and so I'm moving my knight out with tempo.
Oh.
So, you did everything you could. I think the position was just beyond salvation, unfortunately.
I was completely lost when I didn't play d5. That was like pretty much the end of that position.
Yeah, like b5. So that's the key takeaway, right? Knight f6 on move 4. And if you forget, the memory marker you can put in place is kingside development before b5. Before b5 is kind of a funny mnemonic, right? You don't play b5 unless you're ready to castle. Like that you can distill that down to that specific advice. You should be a lot more afraid of the bishop on b3 than you should be of me taking the knight on c6. If that makes sense. So
and having that bishop to d4 line is helpful as well, just for like what to do there in that case.
There's one last exception. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is there ever time, because I'm always scared to take on e4.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they leave that pawn hanging, and then I always end up in my king is pinned situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So
like right there.
So the thing is a knight takes c4 is called the open roy. That is actually a very legitimate move, but it's one of those things where you get behind the wheel of like as I always say, a bus, and like you got to know how to drive the bus or you're gonna crash it into the first pole. So this is a very legitimate line. It's one of the best lines for black. But white has a variety of ways to test black. He goes d4 and opens up the e file. Here you're not supposed to take. That's probably what you were implying. Like you get pinned like this. So here you have to go b5 and then d5. And this has all of its theory. I don't recommend this to people below like 2000 because it requires like filigree precision for black to like not lose in the first 10 moves. And so you want to be careful about that pawn on e4. The way that you want to do this is, again, if you're ready to castle, then you can consider, and they still leave the e4 pawn hanging. Like if you have a bishop on e7, and let's say they play like c3, right, instead of rook e1, then you're ready to castle, so you can take on e4. And if they go rook e1, you can just say, okay, I'm going to drop my knight back. They recapture the pawn, but now you castle. You've got the lead in development, and white really hasn't accomplished anything. He just traded the e-pawns, which is totally fine for you.
Yep.
So that's
would it be worth it there to just take their knight with your knight first?
Yeah, that would be actually probably even a better idea. Get the rook to a vulnerable square, then castle, because now you can play d6 with tempo and get your bishop out quickly. Like white is fighting for equality now. So also you can play b5 and then fianchetto the bishop. That's another good idea. Like now finally you can play b5 if you're not traumatized by that move. So that's
so scary.
But there was one last thing before I'll let you sleep, but just one last remark which is important. You're seeing my stream and I just played move 6 d3. So actually let me play it. So whoops, I did not mean to do that. So knight f6, actually move 5 d3. There is one exception to the rule, because here, if you play bishop e7, that blunders a pawn. Do you see what is the purpose of d3? What does white do here?
They can take the knight and then take the pawn.
Right, and queen d4 loses its effectiveness because the e4 pawn is no longer hanging. So in this position,
and I think
actually
many times for me as well.
You want to play b5 here, and you want to play b5 and follow it up with what move? Like the golden rule of b5. What do you follow it up with?
play knight to a5.
Possible, but again, they'll take the pawn on e5. So, like, what is the priority is always kingside development.
Oh, now get my bishop to e7.
Yep. Not d6 because of knight g5 is annoying. But bishop, that's possible also. But bishop e7 is like the way I'd like you to play it, and then you castle, and then you play d6 at the end. So d6 is the least important of all of the moves. The most important is the kingside development, followed by b5 when they are beginning to threaten to capture your knight. Sorry to overload you with all that. If there, then there. You'll definitely get the hang of it after a couple of games, and I'm like happy to do another session once you get a little experience.
That makes a lot of sense, and that I completely understand that. And you honestly just went through like all the different ways that I've experimented with this, and then I kept like blundering it, and I was like, I have no clue what to do, because I'd go like e7, and then they would take the knight, I'd recapture, and then they take the stupid e-pawn, and I'm like, all right, so I'm not supposed to do that. So then,
then they mate you with knight g5.
Yeah, then I started playing d6, and they start doing this knight g5 thing, and I'm like, there's no winning with this line. I need to study it, obviously, but I just never like studied the opening on it. And yeah, this one's always driven me crazy.
No, the Rai Lopez is probably the most, in terms of like conceptual understanding, it's the most annoying line, because you have to understand so much to be able to play. The other lines are just like a couple traps you have to avoid. But I think now you'll get the hang of it. Like, give it 1-2 games. Like, if you want, like, you can write down the set of priorities, right? Like, first, kingside development. Then you play b5 only when they're threatening to take your knight. And then d6 should usually, like, come last, or it should come right before you castle.
Right.
So that basically is the bottom line. And, yeah, nothing like experience to, like, cement that in your mind, I think. So... But in any case, that was awesome, and I really enjoyed that game. You did everything you could defensively, so keep your head up in that sense.
I tried. Hopefully next time I'll defend better through the initial opening, and then can try and have a better mid game there.
Absolutely, and you'll get white next time. I'm happy to repeat this in the next couple of days. We'll set something up more formally. But this was awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate you staying up, and always love you in the stream. And you're the best. So thanks for the game. All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night, man. Bye.
Catch you later. Good night.
All right. Well, that was Alex. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. And always love your support on the stream. And that was a really fun game. So that was a little Rai Lopez course. Now, a lot of people are saying that's why I play the Sicilian. But here's the thing, guys. You know, they say there's nothing free in the world. Well, the Sicilian is one of those things where you think, let me just avoid all those problems. Well, guess what? The Sicilian has its own set of problems. And in particular, the Alapin is annoying. You know, the open Sicilian, whatever you play, is super theoretical. So, you know, you can get crushed in the Sicilian. And I have gotten crushed in, like, many different ways in the Sicilian. So, I love the Sicilian. I played it for most of my life, but it has its own set of things that you have to know. And the Smith Mora, I mean, although you can skirt it by going knight f6 and transposing into the Alapin, by the way. So you don't actually need to accept the Smith Mora, but, you know, it has its own set of problems. And that's what I really, really want to emphasize.